In the mid-20th century, the Dutch-American scholar of geopolitics, Nicholas J. Spykman, astutely observed a repeated pattern in the expansionist ambitions of states throughout history. He noted that nations often sought to extend their influence by controlling adjacent seas through circumferential and transmissive expansions. This pattern is exemplified by historical powers such as Greece's pursuit of dominance in the Aegean Sea, Rome's ambitions in the Mediterranean, and the United States' strategic interest in the Caribbean Sea. Applying this insight to contemporary geopolitics, it becomes evident that China's assertive actions in the South China Sea align with this historical trend. However, the question arises, can China easily replicate the successes of past nations in taking over the South China Sea, or will it encounter obstacles necessitating a recalibration of this policy? Let us delve into this question about China's ambitions and the challenges it may face in achieving them. The issue of China's territorial expansion in the South China Sea and its implications for regional stability and global trade has become a topic of intense scrutiny and concern. China's approach has been characterized by gradual and often discreet maneuvers, rather than overt military aggression. One significant aspect of China's strategy is the construction of artificial islands in disputed areas, such as the Spratly Islands and the Paracel Islands. These islands have been transformed into military outposts equipped with airstrips, radar systems, and missile installations, allowing China to assert greater control over the region's resources, including fisheries and energy reserves. China's tactics in the South China Sea exemplify a methodical and incremental approach to territorial expansion, often referred to as a gray zone strategy. Instead of direct confrontation, China employs subtle moves such as the gradual occupation of contested features like Scarborough Shoal and Fiery Cross Reef. Additionally, China utilizes its Coast Guard and maritime militia to assert control over these areas. China also uses legal arguments based on historical claims and reinterprets international law to justify its actions. The territorial claims asserted by China in the South China Sea are vast, covering approximately 90% of the sea's area and overlapping with claims from countries including the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, Brunei, Malaysia, and Taiwan. This region holds significant economic value, with estimated oil reserves of 11 billion barrels and natural gas reserves of 190 trillion cubic feet. The disputes and China's actions have raised global concerns regarding regional stability, freedom of navigation, and international trade routes passing through these waters. While China's actions have drawn international attention and concern, the prospect of China easily taking over the entire South China Sea remains a complex issue. Major powers continue to closely monitor China's activities in the region. By examining historical narratives, parallels can be drawn to China's incremental expansion in the South China Sea. Throughout history, empires and states have employed gradual and methodical tactics to extend their influence and control over territories. One notable example is the Roman Empire's strategic expansion into neighboring regions, often starting with diplomatic alliances and economic ties before asserting military dominance. Similarly, China's approach in the South China Sea involves the construction of artificial islands and the deployment of non-military vessels to assert control, reflecting a modern adaptation of historical strategies. The Aegean Sea has stood as a critical theater of Greek history and strategy, integral to its maritime prowess and cultural expansion. Serving as a natural bulwark against invasions, the Aegean's archipelago and rugged coastlines posed challenges to the aggressors, shielding Greek city-states from external threats. Leveraging this geographic advantage, Greek settlements flourished, establishing colonies along the sea's periphery that became hubs of trade and cultural exchange, extending Greek civilization across the Mediterranean basin. Control over the Aegean Sea held profound geopolitical importance for ancient Greece. As Europe's southeastern frontier, it linked Greece with the lucrative markets of the Middle East and the Black Sea, fostering a network of maritime commerce vital to Greek prosperity. Mastery of the sea allowed Greece to assert dominance over its numerous islands. Athens, particularly during its golden age in the 5th century BCE, epitomized Aegean control. The city-state cultivated a formidable naval force, which enabled it to assert authority over key Aegean islands and lead the influential Delian League. a maritime alliance aimed at safeguarding against Persian encroachments in the Aegean. The Aegean Sea, with its over 2,000 islands varying in size and strategic importance, bore witness to the peak of Greek maritime achievements. Greek naval supremacy not only secured vital trade routes, but also safeguarded colonies and facilitated cultural diffusion. Ultimately, Greece's mastery of the Aegean Sea was foundational to its prosperity, security, and enduring contributions to Western civilization. Beyond Aegean Sea, the expansion of ancient Rome across the Mediterranean Sea was a monumental achievement that reshaped the course of history and established Rome as a dominant world power. Recognizing the strategic importance of the Mediterranean as a nexus of trade, culture, and military influence. One of the pivotal phases in Rome's Mediterranean expansion was the series of conflicts known as the Punic Wars, 264 to 146 BCE, against Carthage, a formidable maritime power based in North Africa. These wars culminated in Rome's triumph, with significant territorial gains. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BCE, resulted in Rome's control over Sicily, marking its initial foothold in the Mediterranean. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BCE, led by Carthaginian general Hannibal, saw Rome ultimately seize control of Spain after Hannibal's invasion of Italy. The Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BCE, concluded with the destruction of Carthage, solidifying Roman dominance in the Western Mediterranean. Rome's expansion continued along the Italian peninsula, securing the entire Apennine Peninsula and expanding further into Greece, Sicily, Corsica, Sardinia, and parts of North Africa. To safeguard its growing maritime interests, Rome built a strong navy, employing iconic warships like the trireme to protect trade routes and project military power across the Mediterranean. Key conquests highlight Rome's Mediterranean supremacy, including the annexation of Greece by 146 BCE following victories against the Seleucid Empire. Egypt, too, fell under Roman control after the death of Cleopatra, 7 and 30 BCE, becoming a crucial Roman province. Roman dominion over the Mediterranean facilitated extensive cultural exchange, spread of Latin language, and the propagation of Roman law throughout the region. Rome's systematic expansion transformed the Mediterranean into a Roman lake, laying the foundation for enduring influences that continue to resonate in the modern world. The United States' emergence and establishment of influence in the Caribbean region is rooted in strategic interests, historical events, and economic dynamics. The Caribbean Sea, with its critical position connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans via the Panama Canal, has long been recognized for its importance in trade, security, and cultural interactions. During the Age of Exploration, the Caribbean was dominated by Spanish colonization, followed by the presence of pirates and privateers from various European powers. However, it was in the 19th century that the United States began to assert its influence more significantly in the region. The Monroe Doctrine of 1823 articulated U.S. interests and asserted a sphere of influence in the Western Hemisphere, including the Caribbean. The Spanish-American War in 1898 marked a pivotal moment, resulting in U.S. control over Cuba and Puerto Rico, which subsequently became key areas of U.S. strategic interest. The United States facilitated the construction of the Panama Canal, a monumental engineering feat that transformed global trade and maritime transportation. U.S. influence in the Caribbean extended beyond military and strategic interests. American companies played a dominant role in the region's economy, controlling industries such as sugar plantations, mining, and tourism. The United States' presence in the Caribbean profoundly shaped the region's history, economy, and culture. The relationship between the U.S. and Caribbean nations continues to evolve, reflecting a complex interplay of mutual interests, economic dynamics, and the quest for sovereignty and autonomy. The South China Sea has been shaped by historical influences, territorial disputes, and contemporary power dynamics. Ancient China, with its dynastic rulers, historically exerted influence in parts of the region through exploration and trade. Similarly, the Majapahit Empire, centered in present-day Indonesia, extended its control over segments of the sea during its maritime expansion. During the era of European colonialism, Spain colonized the Philippines, which afforded it control over certain islands in the South China Sea. Meanwhile, other European powers like Portugal, the Netherlands, and Britain established trading outposts and forts in strategic locations throughout the region. The modern era saw further shifts in power dynamics. Japan occupied several islands in the South China Sea during World War II, impacting the territorial landscape. Post-war, the United States emerged as a key player, influencing the post-colonial order and establishing security alliances in the region. Contemporary territorial disputes in the South China Sea are characterized by China's expansive claims, notably the controversial New 10-Dash Line, encompassing nearly 90% of the sea. This assertion of sovereignty is challenged by other claimants, each asserting their own territorial rights. Present-day power dynamics are marked by China's assertiveness, evidenced by artificial island construction and increased military presence, which has raised concerns about regional stability.
同志们好！同志们辛苦了！
The degree of control exerted by the various powers over the South China Sea throughout history has varied significantly based on their historical influence, territorial claims, and geopolitical interests. Historically, ancient Chinese dynasties exerted control over parts of the South China Sea primarily through exploration, trade, and cultural influence. Chinese navigators sailed across these waters, establishing trade routes and occasionally asserting authority over islands and coastal areas. During the era of European colonialism, Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, and Britain established colonial footholds in the South China Sea region. Spain, in particular, controlled the Philippines, which granted it some influence over certain islands in the sea. Other European powers set up trading posts and forts to facilitate their trade networks and maintain maritime supremacy. Japan's control over islands in the South China Sea was largely a result of its military expansion during World War II. The occupation of these islands was part of Japan's broader imperial ambitions in the Asia-Pacific region during the war. Post World War II, the United States played a significant role in shaping the security architecture and geopolitical landscape of the Asia-Pacific region. While the U.S. did not exert direct territorial control over the South China Sea, in recent decades, China has been asserting increasing control over the South China Sea through various means. This includes the construction of artificial islands, installation of military facilities, and enforcement of its expansive territorial claims based on the controversial New 10-Dash Line. China's interest in asserting control over the South China Sea is driven by several strategic, economic, and geopolitical factors. The South China Sea holds significant strategic importance for China due to its location as a critical maritime corridor linking the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Control over this area allows China to project power and influence over important sea lanes used for international trade, particularly for energy resources and manufactured goods. Likewise, the South China Sea is believed to be rich in natural resources, including oil, natural gas, and fisheries. By asserting control over this region, China aims to gain access to and exploit these valuable resources to support its growing economy and energy needs. Also, China views the South China Sea as part of its historical territory, based on historical claims. Asserting control over this area aligns with China's nationalist narrative and desire to regain what it perceives as lost territories. Similarly, China's increasing militarization of artificial islands and deployment of naval assets in the South China Sea serve strategic military purposes. By establishing a strong presence in the region, China aims to enhance its maritime defense capabilities and potentially limit the influence of rival powers, including the United States. Control over the South China Sea allows China to expand its influence in Southeast Asia and beyond. By dominating this area, China can shape regional dynamics, establish alliances with neighboring countries, and strengthen its position as a major player in the Asia-Pacific region.
双方要秉持共商共建、共享原则，充分发挥地缘相近、产业互补优势，加快推进共建“一带一路”倡议。
In essence, the complex dynamics surrounding China's aspirations in the South China Sea highlight a multifaceted play of strategic, economic, and geopolitical factors. China's gradual and methodical approach, marked by the construction of artificial islands and assertion of historical claims, reflects a broader strategy to secure vital sea lanes, access valuable resources, and bolster regional influence. However, these actions have stirred regional tensions, triggering concerns about maritime security, freedom of navigation, and international stability. The South China Sea remains a hotly contested area with overlapping territorial claims, requiring ongoing diplomatic efforts and adherence to international to manage disputes and promote peaceful resolutions.